The Ways and Means Committee of the Board of Aldermen is now called to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Cruzen, Alderwoman Florida.
Present.
Alderwoman Behringer.
Present.
Vice Chairman Williamson. Here. Alderman Moore. Alderman French. Alderman Vaccaro. Present. Alderman Carter.
Present.
Chairman Kennedy.
Here.
7 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We're here today to look over this budget, to review it, and to make any change recommendations, reductions, and additions that we see fit. We could start this out. Really, we just open up the discussion and go from there. Alderwoman Florida, are there any things that you...
Well, when I look at the budget, Mr. Chairman, it's a kind of a difficult budget. There are some things that I would like to do, but I don't know how we would do it. I'm concerned that the grant for the trash task force is expiring in August, and it's only $105,000. But, you know, I don't know where that money would come from. So when I look at this budget, I don't see how we could make any real changes until we're successful in accomplishing our goal of firefighter pension reform. So I think, you know, I'm optimistic that next year will be different.
Alderwoman Behringer, any thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the way of any changes, I don't necessarily see any changes, but I also have a concern about the trash task force because I'm seeing an increased amount of dumping in the 16th Ward, which we've never seen before. And the other thing that we need to also consider, and I tried to get some numbers, and I don't have numbers yet, but that soccer match that was held in St. Louis City was a huge bump. So we should see some increased revenues from that. And then, of course, I will keep praying to the St. Louis Cardinal God that we go back to the World Series again, because every time we do, that is a huge bump for us. So hopefully, if the soccer match were to give enough revenue to cover that trash task force, we could look at that, but we can't predict that at this point. But that's something that's not in this budget. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Alderman Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the discussion with the election board, I know they had just a little small wiggle room with the $100,000 that they had on moving to the 3rd floor of expanding. And I guess it would be up to them. I know they're in need of new software, and with the e-book, that would really alleviate a lot of long lines during elections. And as aldermen and representatives of our community, we get a lot of complaints about that. So that's an idea, something we can kind of look at. If they're willing to use that expansion money to update their software, I think it'd be very helpful. But that's strictly up to them, and that'd be one of my recommendations.
Alderman French.
Yeah, thank you. You know, as usual, every year we tap that public safety sales tax fund. You know, voters approved this a few years ago, and it specifically called for $1 million to go towards you know, funding new nonprofit endeavors to curb youth violence. And we keep tapping that every year. Again, this year it's tapped for drug courts, which I think is a noble program, but that's not what the money was designed for. That's not why people are paying this new sales tax. Last year we, on this committee, restored that. I'd like to see us restore that to the full level again. And regarding the trash task force, again, my position is that citizens are already paying extra money for trash collection, and I don't understand how the streets department can't make do with this extra $14 million that comes in per year to general revenue for this for that endeavor. So I don't support cutting anything else to send even more money over there.
Alderman Vaccaro.
What I told you earlier, there's not much we can do with this year's budget, but we need to start meeting earlier, like this year, for next year's budget. Ward capital needs to be restored. I cannot operate the 23rd Ward, nor can anybody that I know of operate their ward on roughly $224,000 when Last year, me and Donna paved Lansdowne at $80,000 each. This year, I'm splitting with Scott Ogilvy to pave Chippewa. When you give $70,000 to pave one big street, and you
Right.
pay $40,000 so you can have trash cans put back in your neighborhood, and you put $30,000 for trees, the ward capital is probably the most important thing. And there's nothing that we can do in this year's budget that I saw that would make effectively any sense. But I really would ask that as a committee, we start meeting early, often, and that we figure out how to get ward capital restored back in the budget. Every department here, from streets to parks, come to, in front of the budget committee and say, we need this, this is our budget. And we apparently need to sit down and say, look, this is what we need, and we need to insist on it, and we need to make sure that in the future, that we're able to take care of the residents of our wards, which to any one of us is the most important constituency in the city. Thank you.
Alderman Carter. Did you have something, Alderman?
No.
Okay. Alderman Williamson?
Just kind of responding what Alderman French said. I think on the recycle of the refuge, we maybe need to look in that too a little bit more. I thought when we were recycling a lot of the materials, we were generating more revenue, and it costs us, the city as a whole, less money when it comes to the landmines and, filling those landmines and stuff. So I think what he suggested was a pretty good idea. If we can kind of look into that a little bit more to see what kind of money we are generating when it comes to refuge with revenue because of the recycling, because I thought that was a plus of the recycle. So I thought we were going to, alleviate a little bit of expense and maybe earn a little bit of money, generate some more money with the recycle. So that's something that was really unclear to me, something that we kind of need to kind of look into also. That's all I had.
Alderman Florida, did you have something?
No, I'm going to look at, how much are we generating in revenue from the recycling? It's maybe just $300,000 to $600,000. We saved $1 million, like $4 million in the trash transfer fees. So I was just muttering under my breath.
Okay.
Sorry, going to look for the actual figure.
Well, I think some of that may be able to go to the trash task force. That's what I'm saying. You might be able to kind of help them when it comes, because, and I'm sure everybody kind of suffers from this illegal dumping, and we have a real problem with that with a lot of people that live in the county, construction workers, or even people working in the city rehabbing houses, and they dump a lot of that, asbestos and drywall and wood into our dumpsters and alleys, and it is a problem. So with that, saying that, and I'm glad you mentioned that maybe we can implement more cameras to kind of help us out too. Thank you.
Did you have something?
I actually do have a comment, and
Sure.
then I'll quit.
No problem. Go ahead.
I like that the camera's in the room for one reason. When you go back to the trash, when we started charging for trash, and other aldermen that sat in that meeting, we were promised, when that passed, that we would get $100,000 put back in our ward capital, which didn't happen. And then, since it's not recorded, there's it seems lost in the, whether or not that really was said or not. But I know that when it came around to it last time, that was one of the promises.
I'd like to respond to that as a primary sponsor of the expansion of the recycling program, which was the main purpose of that bill. It was my understanding that that $100,000 was for the first year so that we could expand recycling. I don't remember any promise being made that every year we'd get that $100,000 in our ward capital. It was my understanding that we were going to spend that money on cameras and things that were necessary to expand recycling. These have been very difficult years, very difficult years. So I agree with you, Alderman, that I'd like to see capital restored, 100%. I'd like to see the affordable housing restored, and the demolition fund, and the public safety fund restored. But I don't remember, I didn't interpret that bill that it would be $100,000 every year to our ward. I thought it was just that first year to expand recycling, and that those monies stayed within the refuse department to expand recycling.
I agree with the first part, that's what that was. And I'm not arguing, that's why I'm really glad to see TV.
We're on TV, so I had to-
Right, well, I'm glad to see them here, because now we have records of these meetings and what was said. And not to put, well, I won't say which alderman, but there's other aldermen that heard that, what I heard that sat on that committee, and again, there's no proof of anything. So thank you guys for coming and filming this, but at least we have a record. And I didn't do it for the sake of argument, I just, you know, and I agree, and the recycling's been great in my neighborhood, but, you know, I still want to keep harping ward capital.
Mr. Chairman, in fact.
Alderman French.
And like Alderman Vaccaro, I'm also glad that this thing is being recorded now and we have a transcript, because what happens, you know, I think this is my 5th time through this process, is what happens is that some promises get made or some statements get made, and they aren't actually either what's written into the language or something we can actually hold them accountable for the next year. You know, this whole refuse, recycling, the new trash fee, this whole process, I'm not happy with it at all, because I really feel like our folks were told that they were going to pay this new tax, this new fee, and that money was going to take care of our trash needs. But yet, even though that new money is there, we keep getting hit up to tap our ward capital money, to pay for replacement dumpsters. They say now that they may be running out of this grant, they'll need extra money. And that's tough to explain to our constituents why they're paying this monthly fee now and aren't getting superior service, and now even threaten to possibly not getting even the same level of service. So yeah, I'm glad that we're examining that situation. I hope the Streets Department examines it, even the Streets Committee examines it even closer.
We are just, for those aldermen just came in, we are just discussing our general thoughts about the budget and generally any changes or recommendations we might have. So, Alderman Moore, did you have anything? If not, we can come back to you.
If we're talking about, right now, I'm sorry for being late, but I'm a little wore out.
Yeah.
But the recyclable bins and the trash and the cameras has been a problem in my ward for a while. When I went up to BPS to discuss the capital improvement funds, they asked me for $40,000 for the new dumpsters and the cans and all. And then when we sat in the leisure room with Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, with Gary Best, I was explaining to them that last year I had a new container behind my house, and this year I have one with big holes in it. So some kind of way they switched it out. So in order for me to give $40,000 of my capital improvement money, I need to know where every dumpster is, every dumpster, line item, itemized one at a time, where I can go, and I will go and look at each one of them to see what the improvements are. No, I don't trust a lot of this that's going on. I trust the judge that sent the people to jail for indulging in cocaine, and he overdosed. So these things go on all the time. But I want to know where these improvements are before I release any type of money. And the recyclable bins are all over the alleys now. We're not using them to recycle. We're using them for additional trash bins. And it's just it needs to be followed through. It needs to be followed up on to make sure that we're getting the big bang, the best for our bucks that we're spending. Also, I had made a recommendation about 4 years ago. We keep replacing the dumpster lids, and we don't need to do that. If we would take those lids, it's a simple idea, possibly a money-making idea, but I don't know why no one has jumped at it, and I'm giving the idea away, is to line those dumpster lids with metal, like an aluminum or some type of gauge steel on the corners of the dumpsters where the squirrels eat the plastic and go into the dumpsters, and they're in and out. So sometimes when you raise the dumpster lid, a squirrel come running out on you. But if we lace those lids with that metal, it could just be a triangular corner on each corner, the two corners facing facing out into the alley, then we would prevent and save a lot of money by not replacing those lids every year. Personally, I don't care if the lid has a hole in it or not, but eventually they eat a lot of the, I don't know if it's a snack form or something, but I know it's a method of entry, but sometimes they tend to eat up the whole lid, and then when you let it down, it falls down into the dumpster itself, the front of it, and then you have to continue to raise it up to put your trash in. So there are a lot of great ideas and a lot of good things that we can do to save money, but I'm not giving a dime until I know where the dumpsters are and where they're placing them. 2 years ago, I requested a list of where my dumpsters were, and they gave me a list of 1988. I wasn't even in office then, so that just shows how antiquated the system is. And they said they were going to make it up, but I never received yet. I'm yet to receive a list of where all these improvements are. So there's a lot that's going on that I think we can make a lot of improvements and save a lot of money. We're just talking about refuge now.
Our impressions
For all.
about the budget period overall.
Well, also our fleet, our automobiles are a joke. Saturday mornings, you can go to any shopping mall and you'll see a City of St. Louis car at the shopping malls, and they're not doing city work. They'll be in the county and all. And the wear and tear on these vehicles, the maintenance, the tires, the gas, the wrecks that they have, and all this is being overutilized and spending extra money. And when we can park those cars on our lots and transport the people that's supposed to pick those cars up, transport them to the vehicles in the mornings, shuttle them to the vehicles, and then let them go to work. I see no reason for any city employee to be driving around in a city car after hours. I work all day and night. I don't get mileage. I get nothing for the time that we put in, talking about part-time. This is a full-time position in my ward. So if anything, we should be getting it, because we have to, at 5 o'clock, people think that the city's shut down, and that's when most of the problems come out. We should have a night shift. But we need to leave those vehicles, all of them, on a lot somewhere. It don't have to be our lot outside, since we leased that out to hockey and other venues. We need to make sure that our cars, we need to take these cars away and put these cars up, so that way we can save a lot of money. Just imagine if we didn't use them day and night, how much more money we would save in our vehicles, in our fleet. We need to have a motor pool, checking in and checking out, the mileage in, mileage out, the amount of gas in the vehicles, so that way we'll know what's going on. And it's a very simple process. And in this automated and animated Android world, it's very simple to do. But leave those cars here.
Okay. Alderwoman Cruzen, you have anything? Okay. Okay. Alderman Williamson.
Yeah, just briefly, and dealing with the Parks Department, just kind of want to put it down for the record. When it comes to the porta potties in our park, you know, a lot of our city parks, we don't have restrooms anymore. A lot of them are antiquated. Some of them have been demolished, and some of them are just not operating because they're very old and antique. And in a lot of cases, they've been removed. Just wanted to state it for the record now. In the 26th ward, we have 9 parks, and it's going to cost out of capital improvement approximately $22,000 to operate porta potties just within the 26th ward. So I just wanted to state that for the record. I know the Parks Department, they do an excellent job. Anytime I need them, they're there and they respond very quickly and they do excellent work when it comes to manicuring and keeping the parks up. But there is a cost to maintain those porta potties within those parks. So, and I think they're gonna run approximately 8 months, somewhere between maybe April all the way up to maybe October, and then they'll be removed. But that is an extra cost when it comes to capital improvement, you know, of the 26th ward to operate those porta potties, coming by, sucking up the waste, keeping them clean, and keeping them restored. Plus, they're gonna be putting in a 3-wall center block, so they'll be able to anchor and sit down on that. So just wanted to state that for the record. Thank you.
Okay, so
Alderman French?
Yeah, and while we're discussing parks, you know, I think there is a disparity between park funding that we should look at. I think you know, we're all big fans of both Forest and Tower Grove Park. Those 2 parks alone gets so much more than our other parks. Tower Grove especially, which is, you know, Forest Park is different. You know, it's a special amenity in itself, I guess. But I was alarmed to find out the amount that Tower Grove Park gets versus all the Northside parks combined. So that alarmed me, especially considering, you know, it's, as they say, not a city park, but it certainly gets more money than almost every other city park. Well, every other city park except Forest Park. So that alarms me. And I think the other thing too is, you know, we should, probably not now, but at some point, really kind of examine this bond issue. We were asked to vote for two separate bond issues last year, one for Forest Park and then one for all the other parks. Forest Park's bonds have gone through and they've gotten their money, or their money is coming. All the other parks have not. And so we should look at that situation, I think, a little closely. Maybe not now, but later this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I represent Tower Grove Park, and as most of you know, Tower Grove Park was given to the city of St. Louis in a state legislation in the 1860s, and it's required that it remain a line item in the city budget, and it's governed by a board of commissioners appointed by the Supreme Court of the state of Missouri. And this park has been flat for 10 years. In 2011, its allocation was $694,000, and it's $700,000 in 2014. So it's been relatively flat for 10 years. It's based on a formula of maintenance per acre, and per acre, the city parks receive the same kind of support citywide, according to the formula. And I did bring some information from John, how they spent the $700,000 to maintain the park. So the city does not mow the park or maintain it. The monies we provide support the maintenance of the park. And if you are unhappy with this arrangement, Henry Shaw's family would take the park back. So we have to adequately support the park, or it reverts back to the Shaw family. Now, I know that you support parks. You can see I've lived in Tower Grove 30 years now, and I lived there before John Carroll. There was a time before John Carroll when the park was a real detriment, and it was a scary place. So under the direction of John Carroll, who raises a lot of money for the park, for all the additional amenities that you see. The bare bones maintenance of the park, the funding isn't enough to really, to do the park right. So he is able to leverage the little bit of money that we provide to maintain the park into significant fundraising all across the region. So it's, I think, a wonderful model and an example of how important parks are to our community, which was one of the reasons why I supported Prop P, so that all of our parks could receive significant investment. So your Fairgrounds Park is receives monies besides, you receive monies from the Major Parks Initiative. You also have a recreational center that is subsidized to the tune of $1.2 million. We don't have a recreational facility serving my whole community unless we pay. So, I think it all comes out in the wash. Parks are an anchor and can be an asset to our community, and they're very important. So I would argue, please, I would never mess with your park, never. I would do whatever I could to make sure that your parks, all of our parks, are assets rather than detriments, because I've already lived that where the park was a detriment. And I've benefited greatly, our neighborhoods have benefited greatly with the park being an asset to the community for the last, I would say 12 years. John's been there 20, 25 years, but it took some time to turn it around.
You're right, I support parks 100%. I've seen large public spaces be of great benefit to helping revitalize neighborhoods, and they've also, if left neglected, can really be a detriment to revitalizing neighborhoods. So I appreciate Tower Grove Park. I visit Tower Grove Park. I also understand the history of Tower Grove Park, and that according to the deed, the city is obligated to fund the park. I have no problem with that. The question is at what level, and your numbers are a little off. So Tower Grove Park, like all other parks in the city, gets part of the sales tax based upon acreage, true. And I think Tower Grove's level is around 500,000 based on acreage. But then in addition to that, Tower Grove then gets the 700,000 this year, as they have the last previous years. So Tower Grove from the city taxpayers is actually getting $1.2 million this year, which is almost 10 times as much as some large parks in North St. Louis. I remember just 5 or 6 years ago, O'Fallon Park was a scary place, as you say. It was one of these places where it seemed like only drug dealers and bad guys were hanging out, and you didn't see much family activity there. We worked with the resources we have and have improved that park greatly. It's a place now, you go this morning, you'll see moms pushing their kids in strollers, and that would not have happened 5 years ago. The addition of the rec center is a great thing. You're right, it does get a $1.2 million annual subsidy, but that does not come to the park or come to the city. That goes directly to the YMCA through an agreement, work through the Parks Department and the YMCA. So that does not go towards maintenance of the park at all. And the facility is not free. People do pay. Thank goodness we have had so far 3,500 people willing to pay to use that. But I can only imagine what O'Fallon Park or Fairground Park could mean to those neighborhoods if we made a $12 million investment over 10 years like Tower Grove Park is. And so I just think that it's a dangerous situation when the city is sometimes picking winners and losers, and if they pick a favorite park and say we're going to put a bunch of taxpayer money in this thing on an annual basis, we envy that over on our side of town. I think that a $1.2 million annual investment in Fairground Park would go a long way to helping revitalize that neighborhood.
I disagree that the city has picked a winner in this case. This is just a situation where Henry Shaw had great foresight to put these stipulations to the land that he bequeathed to the city. And it is a very unique situation. It's not like the city picked its winner. We have a responsibility to fund the park as a part of our obligation and to meet the criteria of the original agreement. And now, because we've done these capital major parks, neighborhood parks monies, 7 parks in the city benefit greatly. So that was done by ordinance, and that's where maybe you take issue. But it's not like the city decided that, oh, we picked Tower Grove Park, it's our favorite. It was Henry Shaw who picked Tower Grove Park, who had the foresight to create that unique governance of, requiring that the Supreme Court appoint the Board of Commissioners, and then our state legislature, I think just last year, expanded that Board of Commissioners so that they could do an even better job at fundraising. So each commissioner is responsible for supporting and promoting that asset. So the city has benefited greatly, I think, by Henry Shaw's foresight to protect the park so that it isn't treated just like any city asset. You're right. But it's not like the city decided, oh, we decided to do that. We did not. That was Henry Shaw. And so we've agreed to this. And I wasn't here when we decided that these 7 parks are the major parks and they're going to benefit from the major parks capital funds. I think we did that in the 80s before I was ever an alderman. I've only been an alderman 12 years. So I understand your concern about disparity. I do. But your park does benefit from major parks, and your park benefits from neighborhood parks. I didn't pick this form of governance. Henry Shaw did. And I think, we have a responsibility to honor it or let it go back to the Shaw family. And that's just the way that it is. And I personally think it's a huge asset to the city and a wonderful model. And I'm sad that you can't see the value in this situation and that you think we've done it intentionally to you. That's not true. That is not true, and you know that, I think, deep in your heart.
Okay, so I think you're setting up a false premise here that yes, the agreement with the Shaw family says the city has to fund it. Right. But the question is, O'Fallon and Fairground Park get around $150,000 to $200,000 a year. On that same formula, Tower Grove gets about $500,000.
$425,000 for the major
Okay,
parks.
and then Tower Grove double dips and gets a second pot of money. Those 2 pots of money together total over $1 million. I think $1.2 million this year.
The major.
So wait a minute. So my question is this, though.
No, Antonio.
My question is this.
No.
Is under the agreement with the city and the Shaw family, isn't $600,000 enough, or isn't $700,000 enough? And nowhere in the agreement does it say it has to be at $1.2 million.
No, the agreement, I think, is that it's to be treated, it's to get the same treatment that any city park. And
And that's
because
the
we've
first
done the
part.
major parks capital, here's where I think you're being disingenuous, okay? We made a compact with the voters when we passed that capital bill. So we fund Tower Grove Park, just like we fund any park. So based on your logic right here, we wouldn't fund any of our parks anymore because they get the capital money. You get the major parks money. Why do you get anything else? Well, you got that. So the formula for capital is based on acreage. Tower Grove Park gets $425,000, you get $125,000. It's for capital improvements, it's for your ponds, it's for your sidewalks, it's for all the infrastructure stuff that's so expensive. And then there's the line item investment that we have a responsibility to maintain that park. That's what the $700,000 is. It was $650,000 12 years ago. So that has stayed flat. And then for, I think, 3 years, we took the major parks money, or two years. They got nothing, nothing
But the
but the line
$700,000.
item. Yeah, the line item.
Which was still
which
which
is
was
supposed to
still
cover,
$700,000 more than
park
any other park
rangers
got.
and the daily maintenance, because our parks department doesn't come out and cut the park or maintain it or do anything. So I think you've got to keep it straight. That major parks capital was what the voters said. We want more money going into our parks. That's what they said back in the 80s. The capital money was for additional support.
Right.
And here you can see that we just passed Prop P. So the voters once again have said, These parks are hugely important. They're huge assets and the center to our communities, and they want them even more improved, or they wouldn't have passed that tax. So the voters keep saying, invest in our parks, invest in our parks. Here's more money, invest in our parks. So let's not say, oh, well, you get major parks money, so you're not a line item anymore. That's good enough. Well, the voters aren't saying that, Alderman French. That's not what I'm hearing them
I don't think
say.
the voters know that Tower Grove gets treated differently and double dips and gets two funds. And so in a year when other parks didn't get any money for capital improvement, Tower Grove still got its
I
$700,000.
think you're being manipulative by saying it's a double dip, because
Excuse
it's
me,
not.
pardon me,
I'm
pardon me,
sorry.
pardon me, pardon me.
No, I'm getting upset. Sorry.
We are, and we know that we're all passionate about different aspects of our community. It doesn't do us any good in any shape, form, or fashion, in my opinion, to start questioning each other's motives and to raise in that manner. And I'm just pointing that out as the chair, and I would appreciate if we don't do that. It doesn't serve our purpose. We all know that we're really trying to do what is best for the city. The idea of a legislative body is to have a group of individuals who are diverse with different ideas, so those ideas can be discussed, and some places of agreement could be found that reflects that diversity. And so it doesn't help us to question our motives. So I would give a little bit more time for the discussion if we can keep it according to the protocols of the board. Okay? So did you have a response?
I think we're just going to agree to disagree. I think
Right.
that from my perspective, Tower Grove gets double dip. They get two pots of money, totaling $1.2 million, when other parks are suffering and only get around $150,000 to $200,000. And I think over a long enough time period, 10 years, 20 years, that creates a huge disparity where you see the state of some large parks in our neighborhood versus other large parks in the city. And it's just a disparity that I don't think taxpayers are aware of, and I think we should be conscious of.
You can respond.
I disagree to your terminology, double dipping. The line item funding for Tower Grove Park, the $700,000 is for its maintenance. The other pot is the major parks capital funds that was passed in the 80s, that the 7 major parks all receive based on acreage.
Mr. Chairman.
You had something, Alderman?
Yes, sir.
Okay, first I want to recognize Behringer, then
I
I'll
won't be long. I do you like Elizabeth Taylor told her 8th husband. I won't keep you long. I'm short-winded
We'll
on
go
this.
with it. You okay? Alderman Moore?
We're talking about parks, and we want to see a park. We have a park called Rumble Park, alias Walgreens. It is a park where we got it specifically set up for drug dealers, because we don't go there. We don't enforce the law. We do nothing in that park. When I was promised for my vote that I would get some more attention on my park, they rushed to judgment, put in a walking trail with no direction, no definition of which way to go on the park. Inside of that park is an old electrical plant with the rear doors that are open. A young lady was raped in it to no avail. We didn't board it up. We've been screaming and hollering and jumping up and down like cheetahs trying to get it done. It covers about 1/5 of the park, this large old electrical plant with 10-foot high grass growing around it. This is a city park. We've never been able to play softball in the park since I've been an alderman in 6 years, but we have promised this every year that the improvements, the neighborhood park funds and all this is going to be taken care of, but it's not taken care of. So if you want to see a park, come ride with me and visit Walgreens Park, because they sell more drugs than Walgreens in that park, and it's never enforced. We had a group of narcotics agents over staying in one of the buildings trying to prevent this. You drive by us right now, even if it's raining, you might see 20, 30 people, but they're not using the park for what it's meant for. And I've been talking, and please don't get it twisted that I'm some grumpy old guy in pain. I am based strictly on what my constituents sent me here to do, is to find out why is it that we're being so mistreated in this great city of St. Louis. And we are absolutely being set aside, and I guess the Team 4 plan is now beginning to take its course, because we have and I want to get off the parks real quick, and the 1,900 to 2,200 lots that we have that are empty, I need a surge. I need your tractors, the 2 that you have in your ward. I need all the tractors to come over and cut the grass at one time to surge my community, and then go wherever you go. But when they come, they do like 1/4 or 1/5 of my ward, and they forget about the other part. The grass is now 4 feet tall, and instead of them blowing it or cutting it away, it lays down on the sidewalk. They just cut it where to lay down. And it's uglier than what it was before they cut the lot. And this is continuously going on all day. Yesterday I did 47 calls, and all of them was about grass being that tall. So they'll start, and then they'll go somewhere else, they'll get called, and they forget about coming back and finishing up their job. They'll go on the other side, and I talk to the forestry department, I talk to Gary Best, and I talk, we're going to take care of you, Alderman. It never happens. So what I need is a surge. I think we have it twisted where we have those rotations. I need to have them to come in and bliss my community and then go elsewhere. And I think I get like 3 to 4 cuts a year, and that's just not fair for the amount of lots that I have. And we're looking for help, and we're looking for suggestions. And Jennifer, you're a nice lady, but I'd have to wear a gun to protect you in my ward, because I'm just familiar with them. But it's horrible in there. And we're looking for help all the time, and suggestions from my colleagues, personal suggestions, not blasting out on the floor and in committee hearings, just to come to me and say, hey, I got an idea, I got something that we can help that part of St. Louis become a part of St. Louis, because we don't feel like we're a part of St. Louis, and that's why the things are going on like they're going on in that area where I am, because this is a very polarized city, and I'm not angry at anybody. I'm just here to get questions answered, because I represent a group of people that feel like they've been the disparity is going on for over 50 years. So I'm looking for that. I'm looking for us to come together and tell the people in forestry, hey, why don't you, instead of coming cutting these 3 lots that I got, or these 5 lots I got, let's help the 4th Ward out and send our tractors and send all the personnel over to the 4th Ward, surge the 4th Ward, and then go where we go elsewhere. Thank you.
Alderman Behringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one thing I want to make sure that I say is that when we had the public hearings, where we had the public come in, what was very clear to me is that we need to explain the process, especially when it comes to the parks. And that's because the people I talked to after that meeting in the audience did not know there's a difference between a city park and a neighborhood park. They didn't know that the aldermen could apply for grants, that there were 2 different types of grants they could apply for to get things in those parks. And so it was very much news to them. And I feel that we should probably have an open meeting explaining how our parks are funded. Because when people actually start to see how the neighborhood parks are funded versus the city parks, the grants that we as the aldermen are responsible to fill out if we want to get money into our park, I think it'll make a difference. And then people will see and share ideas, because I'm stealing the idea. I started Friends of Francis Park, a 501c3 based on the Forest Park Forever and the Tower Grove 501c3, because we desperately need money for a park, and there's no money for it in this budget, so we had to find other ideas. I am more than happy to help anyone with ideas. I talked to the velodrome people. I explained to them that there were grants out there that in other parts of the country they were able to get money for that type of a velodrome, and I gave them that information. So for me, I would like us to have a meeting and explain exactly where the money comes from, how it's spent, so that we clarify, because I don't want anyone to ever say, your park shouldn't get any money. And it is unfortunate, but someone said that to me after that meeting. And that's not how I want anyone to see it at all. I want all parks to be as best as they can be, because it's best for the city. And I always think regionally. I don't want anyone to have more than the other person, and so if I can help you, I will help you. But we can't look at it as, we've got to pinpoint this gets this gets this. And I would like to see us all work more together, that's all. Thank you.
Alderman Williamson.
Yeah, just briefly, thank you. In retrospect, talking about the parks, and I think the parks are very important. They are a treasure in our community. I understand that how the alderman in the Fourth Ward feels, and I've been there with Ruth Portermall. Ruth Portermall is a 9-block linear park in the 26th Ward. And at one time, we had a nickname, AKA it's Jurassic Park, because there was a lot of shooting, killing, and drugging. And working with Great Rivers Greenway, approximately back in 03, 02, they were very saving, and we were very blessed to work with them along with WashU in coming in and renovating that park. That is a very nice park that we have now. And that's one of the reasons I was in support of Proposition P, because of that reason, because they made that park out to be one of the best parks in the city of St. Louis when it comes to North St. Louis, and we were very fortunate of that. And in dealing with who gets what in sharing, I know we have the problem with Tower Grove, and I know you're very protective of that park too. And one thing I like to just ask the Parks Department, because some of the problems I have, Ivan Perry Park and a few other, is when it comes to the rangers or police. And I don't understand that process. How many park rangers do we have? And I think you're very fortunate, Alderwoman, to have a park ranger in Tower Grove Park. And in Alderman French's defense, he has a large park, O'Fallon Park, and I guess he shares some of Fairground too. And those large parks really need security, I think. Now, I'm not saying 24 hours or what have you. I just like to know the process of how those parks are patrolled. One of the problems I've had, and mainly Ivan Prairie Park, I get a lot of calls when, they drive their vehicle up on the park. They have their vehicle sitting in center field of a baseball diamond, which is not acceptable. So a lot of times the police have to respond, and we don't know exactly, what the park rangers are doing, or if they're available, or what's their schedule. So, in bringing Parks Department back, I think that'll be a good discussion on see how the disparity, the fairness, especially when it comes to security, and maybe other things. Not that we're trying to take anything away from one park to another, or one side of the city from another. Just explain to us how things work throughout the whole city, when it comes to all our parks. So, that's all I have.
Alderman French.
Yeah, I'm glad Alderman Williamson brought that up. I mean, park rangers is a whole nother bag of worms. A park ranger is a rare sight over in O'Fallon or Fairground Park. We get more, we work better with the police department, and we see more police officers patrolling every now and then in the parks than we do park rangers. That's a rare sight in those parks. So that, I think, is another disparity we should look at. Yeah, I think you go into some parks and, you always bump into a park ranger. Park rangers seem to stay stationed in those parks, but in other parks and other neighborhoods, it's a rare sight.
You had something? Okay. Yeah, I think, Alderwoman Behringer, I think it became clear from the public meetings that we did have that there's a need for greater public education about not only the budgetary process, but the city budget in general. It was a good start, but I think a lot more is needed. I appreciate your comments on that. Are there any other discussions or any other areas of recommendations or changes? Certainly, when we began the...
No,
Alderman,
no, I just,
go ahead.
I had no other discussion. I thought you were getting ready to bring it up to,
I am in just a second. I did mention at the beginning of this process that bringing the departments in at that time for this process was not the only time to do this. And so some of you have raised that issue. I think we should bring some of them back that we've already discussed and have some further discussions with them related to their budget and how they're setting some of the priorities. So, okay, with that, we can, if there's no other discussion,
I would like to make
entertain a motion to send this
that
on
we
to ENA.
And we pass it out and send it back to ENA.
Been moved and seconded that we send the budget back to ENA without any further changes. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, Mr. Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Cruzen. Alderman Florida.
Aye.
Alderman Behringer.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Williamson. Aye. Alderman Moore. Aye. Alderman French. Aye. Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Carter. Aye. Chairman Kennedy.
Aye.
9 yes votes, 0 no votes. The board bill will be referred back to ENA.
I will make an attempt to possibly put into writing some of this discussion in case we want to send some of these thoughts to ENA as well. So I'm not saying it's going to be a perfect review, but my attempt is to put some of our thoughts and concerns in writing in case we do want to send that on to ENA. Okay? That's fine. We have no other points on the agenda today. Our meeting is adjourned.